Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jose Cruz from the San Diego Council on Literacy. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio. And our guest is Cheri Rae. She is the director of the Dyslexia Project. They are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Cheri, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jose. It's nice to be here.
So glad to have you. And there are different ways we like to approach, subjects, and maybe starting with your interest in dyslexia, how you got to be where you are today. And I'd like to talk to you about DyslexiaLand and your book and what your organization is doing. But you are the director. Are you the sole director, like the founding director?
I am. Yes. And it got started out of, as with so many parents, I learned about dyslexia because after my son's struggles to learn to read, I finally learned after many years of difficulties and running around trying to figure it all out, finally figured out that he was dyslexic. And I learned so much that it became obvious that I needed to share that information with other parents. So I was new to the game, and that was about 15 years ago. And I became, as a because I'm primarily a journalist, I researched the subject to death, and I figured I need to share what I know with other families.
And so, how old was your son when you noticed maybe he was falling behind in school?
Yeah, when he was he never was really interested in. He loved being read to, but he didn't ever have an interest in books, like sitting down to look at them. And now that I look back, I could have identified many of his behaviors. I could have, if I'd known what to look for, I would have known, he's dyslexic, but I didn't. But by second grade, it was very clear that he was really, really having a lot of trouble with reading. But he had whooping cough that year, and we sort of attributed some of his struggles to missing so much school. So I really didn't identify it. We messed around with special ed for several years, and really it didn't do much of anything except, talk to him about the 5-paragraph essay and not specific reading instruction that he needed. So it was not until he was about 13 that we finally recognized what his issue was, and what they called specific learning disability was dyslexia.
And
I
was
nuts.
Right, and at that age, and quite often, you'll tell us. Were you able to find help through the school? Did you have to go through another avenue? Did you have to provide the intervention?
Well, what happened was, because of all the research that I had done, I began to understand that there was a different way to teach reading than when he was getting in school. And so during the IEPs and the special ed meetings that we had, my husband and I kind of played good cop, bad cop, and finally we got to the point where the point blank question was, do you have a reading program that's specifically tailored for students with dyslexia? And they had to admit, no, they did not. And then we're like, well, bingo, that's what we want. And we were able actually to make the case that because the school district could not provide him with proper instruction, that they had to provide it for him through a private organization, which they in fact did. And he did intensive 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, just reading instruction for a couple of months. And it literally brought him up to grade level. And then I started thinking about how much money they were spending on one kid, and how completely unfair it was that my boy was getting what he needed, but so many other kids weren't. And that's when I became an advocate. Because I realized that it was just this basic unfairness.
And so, at one point, did you start interacting with or communicating with other parents, and do people find you?
Yeah, well, it was very interesting. At the time, there was actually a very innovative center I live in Santa Barbara, and in Santa Barbara there was a woman named Joan Esposito who was a real pioneer in dyslexia awareness, and she actually had a nonprofit that she'd established back in 1990. And so there was this center there, and she had an amazing library, and so eventually, all roads led to her. So I went to her, and she's the one who kind of advised me about, what was likely going on with him and why he was struggling so much. And then as I learned more from her and from my own research, I branched out, and then she ended up retiring, and I I tried to step into her very large footsteps, So, so then I became sort of the dyslexia lady in town, and I actually ended up working with the school district for a time. We had a very forward-thinking superintendent who actually hired me to recreate Joan's resource center in the school, in the school district's basement, which was incredible. We created a parent resource center. It was fabulous. I mean, we brought in all the politicians and all the local press, and Paul Orfila came. Everybody was like, yeah, this is great. And then, as happens often in school districts, one superintendent's interests might not be the same interests as the next one's. So the following superintendent shut it down completely. So we had a nice, that was not a great ending to it, but it was a bright and shining couple of years that we did a great deal to move forward and create much more awareness. I worked in the libraries, went to classrooms, talked about dyslexia to children. We had monthly dyslexia dialogues in the school board room, which was really quite wonderful. And we even did an annual Distinguished Dyslexic Speaker Series. And we brought in Victor Villaseñor one time, and John Rodriguez, and Peggy Stern, who has her videos called Dyslexiaville. And so we had a lot of really interesting people. Oh, and Harvey Hubble, he came, the filmmaker who did his movie about dyslexia. So it was really great, and we really did a lot. And now I'm realizing that we can sort of redo some of that, even though we're going to be launching some local projects that won't be involved with the school district. We'll just do it on our own.
Wonderful. Well, I'm hearing you in this history, because a lot of times when I'm having this conversation with a parent, I hear about the frustration and the schools didn't respond, and right, and I'm not hearing that from you, but I get the sense also you had the resources for the intervention that your son needed, and maybe the story's not the same for other people that you came across, because it seemed like the schools were working with you.
Yeah, the school was not working with us for years.
Okay.
We got the same kind of we got the runaround from basically from second grade to sixth grade, which was we'll wait and see, give us 6 more weeks. He's doing fine. He's such a great kid. It'll all be fine. And what happened was I was watching my daughter, who is 5 years older than my son. She was in high school, and by the time I realized, my gosh, he'll never do this kind of work if he can't read, and he's a baseball player, and he wanted to be a varsity baseball player. And he's like, there's no way he's going to play baseball if he can't read. So it became extremely important to us to just focus completely on the reading. And it took us a long, long time. And I kind of gloss over how difficult it was. But ultimately, we did prevail upon the school district, without a lawyer, by the way, to do the right thing. Unfortunately, I learned later that they do a lot of these private settlements, but they're always with a non-disclosure agreements. So parents don't know what they're doing, and taxpayers don't even know what's happening to their tax dollars. where they're doing these private settlements and saying, gosh, we don't have a teacher who can teach this kid, so we're going to send him. In this case, we had a Linda Midbell Center, and they sent him to Linda Midbell. So my tactic was, okay, let's get teachers trained. And so what I did was I worked very closely with the school district after that and we actually got 30 teachers semi-trained in some aspects of Linda Midbell. So there was a little bit of a positive outcome, because I wanted to make it better for all kids, not just my own kids.
Right. And did you find, we're going to go to break in just a second, and so if I cut you off, but did you find that the teachers wanted this, they were looking for this, they didn't know they were missing it? Got about 1 minute,
So many teachers, I feel so sorry for them because they really want to do the right thing, and they feel very uncomfortable about they're stymied for a number of reasons. And some of it is their own training that they don't even recognize. And I've had teachers literally cry on my shoulder or come into the Parent Resource Center and just say, is it okay if I'm here? I want to learn more.
Yeah.
So
boy,
they're really caught in the middle.
Yeah. And Cheri, we have a lot to talk about. I mean, just there's a lot here. So we're just in terms of the teacher training aspect, why wasn't it happening in their early teacher training? I'd like to talk more about interventions. So we're going to come back just briefly. We're going to take a break.
Okay.
We're talking to Cheri Rae.
Alrighty.
She is the director of the Dyslexia Project, and you're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk. And instead, our music's going to come in right now. And then we'll be back. That's just after this break.
Homeless veterans and their families are suffering and need our support, but many won't ask or don't know that help is within reach. Veterans Community Services is here to help. Amazingly, about 35% of the homeless in our neighborhoods are veterans with families. Low-income veterans or their friends are encouraged to contact Veterans Community Services and reach out for help with housing and other services. Call now, 800-974-9909.
I'm Dr. Janet Woodcock, Director for the Center for Drugs at FDA. If you've recovered from COVID-19, confirmed by a positive test, you're in a special position to help us fight the virus. Your plasma has antibodies that can fight COVID. Please donate plasma now. You can help save lives. There are locations across the country that have safe ways for you to donate. Find a site to donate your plasma at coronavirus.gov.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services at taxpayer expense.
This is Bill Gruber with BizVid Communications, a Southern California video production leader. We've been honored to sponsor, produce, write, and host many of the fine programs on WS Radio over the years, so we understand how important the internet and your website exposure are. As video producers, we know the tricks and secrets to incorporate video to increase your search engine optimization and business success. Visit bizvidcommunications.com to see what we can do for you. BIZVID communications.com.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McCullough brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcCullough.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McCulloughe. ChristopherMcCullough.com.
Can you imagine a world without children? A world without their smiles or their laughter? A world where children don't play or sing or dream or imagine?
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we can't imagine a world without children. That's why we're working every day to find cures for diseases that strike down children everywhere. Diseases like cancer, pediatric AIDS, and sickle cell. And we won't stop until every child is cured and every disease is defeated. Because we can't imagine a world without children. Can you?
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. To learn how you can help, log on to our website, stjude.org.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jose Cruz from the San Diego Council on Literacy. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio. And our guest is Cheri Rae. She is the director of the Dyslexia Project. Are you still there, Cheri?
I'm still here.
Okay, real good. That was kind of a long break. I wanted to talk to you about in your research and what you've learned about the interventions. I mean, what is being done differently? We talk about dyslexia. What is being done differently for children like your son or other kids out there who struggled? What are the things that you see that have to happen? Maybe this is a bit about Linda Mood-Bell and other things, but maybe just for our listeners, what happens when the interventions go into play?
Well, people who are dyslexic really need to have a very direct, explicit, sequential, and very structured approach to reading instruction. And it typically needs to be multisensory. And so it's like teaching the language in a very specific, direct way. And unfortunately, what happens typically in most of our public schools is a different approach, which is much more inferential and not based on phonics necessarily, but more of a getting contextual clues. And there's a belief that if you simply immerse kids in books and give them the opportunity to look at pages, that they'll like magically pick up reading by osmosis. And some kids actually do pick up reading fairly easily. Dyslexics do not. And the interesting thing is the same approach, this very structured approach, which is called the science of reading, and there's so many scientific studies that have proven that that is the way to teach reading. Like, let's embrace some science here. That really works for everyone. So if we simply use this structured approach throughout, we would have much higher reading scores. Our literacy rates all over the country are not as near what they ought to be.
Oh yeah,
you know that.
Yeah, and I'm doing some research right now. Oh my goodness. The numbers are just overall in San Diego County, San Diego Unified School District. Well, 43% of the kids are not reading. They're not meeting the language arts standard, and that's just far too many. And so what's happening? Right, how much of this is instruction, how much of this is, access to resources. There are a lot of things that come into play. Sometimes it's not a stable household, so it's kind of hard to learn, or you're hungry, and you're moving around a lot. Yeah. A lot of things come into play, but at least we can address the methodology. And so, do you ever get resistance? I mean, I was chuckling a second ago because it's like when we decide that phonics is the answer to the question, there's some pushback. Do you get pushback on that? I mean, it's like, no, well, we use, and I always hear this, and I'm sure you heard it. We use what works best for the child, right?
Well, it's this is such a huge discussion because so much of it is economics and politics that go into how a school district selects a reading program. And it's not necessarily the input of the experts, but the feelings of those who make the decisions. And I was actually called in when they made the decision last time about which way they were going to go. And unfortunately, they decided to go with this balanced approach. And I actually spoke with the person who got to make the final choice, who said, I don't really know anything about this dyslexia stuff, but I hear this is a really good program. Well, okay, but we also have, like 40% competency in reading in Santa Barbara as well, as most counties do across the country. It's horrifying. And unfortunately, there's a lot of marketing that goes in, and I've seen the dog and pony shows that, they come in and they bring their materials and they give these, they provide these nice box sets, and everybody thinks, ooh, that's so nice, when really we need to get back to basics. And it's not a program, it's an approach to reading, and it goes way back to Orton Gillingham in the, in the 1930s, who figured out how to do this very structured, direct approach to reading. And yes, it might not be, as much fun with bells and whistles, but it actually works.
Right. So we're, like I said, there's a lot to talk about here, but it sounds like just coming out the gate, how we're preparing people, our educators, to teach reading. Are we even teaching them how to teach reading? And I come from teaching, and I remember my reading methodology class. I don't know that. I actually, the book I checked out, I had to do a report, and it was Why Johnny Can't Read. I picked the best book. I picked, you did. It influenced me, and I was, 24 years old, 23, 24, but it's like, this was the book I needed to read. I'm the only one who did a report on it, but it was about phonics and why we're failing the way we are right now. And so the conversation being about teaching teachers, your take on that.
That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Well, that's a huge issue, and you were lucky because the fellow that wrote that book, Why Johnny Can't Read, 25 years later, he wrote Why Johnny Still Can't Read.
Yeah.
And he's, and he coined the phrase the reading wars. So it's been going on a really long time. And sadly, our teaching colleges are not providing teachers with the proper supports. And there's nothing sadder than having a teacher, literally sitting there helplessly saying, quietly, because they don't want anybody to know when they don't know how to teach this approach, and they haven't been taught otherwise. And so, if we're really going to solve this literacy issue, we really have to deal with how the teachers are being taught. And that's just not. That's not happening in the way that it should. But there are a few states that are actually that have actually banned the use of the balanced literacy approach. Colorado, Arkansas, and Mississippi are 3 states where they're not allowed to use those approaches any longer. So at least they're going to be starting to lead, let's hope, a different approach, and maybe their reading scores will be so enhanced that others will see, oh, we better start paying attention.
That's incredible. So in essence, these states are saying phonics. Am I right? Is that what
they're saying? Well, they're saying, look at the science.
Yeah.
Let's use what works.
Yeah.
It's about time.
It's about time. Wow.
Yeah.
But you said it early on, just in terms of the politics, which quite often means money, which in this case means curriculum, materials that are being sold to educators, to school districts and such. And tell me if I'm right. I mean, I never made this connection before, and I probably should have. Since we're not teaching our teachers how to teach, then let's use this contextual approach, because they can learn that, they can teach that, even though they can't teach phonics.
Well, and it seems really nice, and it's all a nice set, and they've got little readers that go with it, and it's all boxed up nicely, and they tell them that they're going to provide support, and then let's look at how are those decisions made. Okay, you've got usually it's an assistant superintendent who's given the job, and then they bring their findings to the school board. And does the school board member, they might be, have their heart in the right place, but do they really know how reading is taught? No, not necessarily.
No.
Yeah, and I've certainly found that that's the case. And every time that I've gone to the school board, and either individually or in public, and talked about this issue, we get kind of that glazed over look, like, what are you talking about? We don't want to get into this. And I've had former school board members who have come to me and said, I can't believe we spent millions of dollars on this program, and look, it's not working.
Yeah.
And they don't want to change it because they feel like, well, they've made such an investment. How can they then admit it wasn't such a good investment?
Well, I've seen that. I've seen people. They really have meant well, did their research and then came up with, I'm going to say it, reading recovery. I don't know what's happened to that, but I just remember having the conversation. It's like, this is not going to do it. And it's like, well, we're being told that reading recovery has too much phonics in it, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, and and I'm not that deep into it, but there was, that was the thing. This is the best we could come up with, and I guess I'm going back to the 1990s, right? And I'm not sure where that is, but this was like the thing, and it's how do we, right? So anyway, I'll let you respond to that.
Well, a lot of it is marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just the marketing, and right now it's Lucy Calkins and the Teachers College approach, and even Lucy Calkins has now come out and said, gosh, I need to add more phonics. Well, you can't just add more phonics to a program that doesn't begin with phonics, and we really have to think about, it's not a program, it's an approach.
Right.
And
it's not the flavor of the month.
So there's a big Exactly. And so oftentimes it's a languaging issue, and when we're talking about curriculum or program, it's like, no, that's not what we want to talk about. It's how do you approach teaching reading. And most people, most fine, well-meaning parents and community members, they just figure you send your kid to school, they're going to learn to read.
Yeah.
They don't even recognize that there's different ways to teach it.
Well, and we're going to come back to that too, Cheri, but we're going to take a break now. And we're talking to Cheri Rae. She's the director of the Dyslexia Project, and we haven't even talked a whole lot about that, or DyslexiaLand, and we're going to. But this is such good stuff. So much appreciate having you on the show, Cheri. We're going to go to break. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show here on WS Radio, worldwide leader in internet talk. And listeners, stand by for more from Cheri Rae.
Does your business do a lot of shipping and wish you could get more for less? Stamps.com is the solution. It's the ideal way to automate and simplify your e-commerce shipping needs. Easily import all your venues like eBay, Amazon, and others. Trips to the post office will soon become a memory. Stamps.com gives you postage on demand. Just click, print, and mail at discounted shipping rates. See why so many e-commerce businesses have switched. Visit Stamps.com.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.
Love to read but just don't have the time? With Audible.com, you can catch up on reading simply by listening. Audible has the largest collection of digital audiobooks, over 85,000 titles in every genre. Listen to a bestseller on your iPhone, BlackBerry, Android smartphone, or one of 500 other compatible devices. Visit audible.com/WS Radio today and get a free audiobook when you try Audible free for 14 days. That's audible.com/WS Radio.
I've heard this is like one of the best pizza spots in town.
Yes, it is.
I'll do a slice of pepperoni, slice of vegetarian.
You got it.
And I will pay for all of that in 3 days.
In 3 days? What's that mean?
Well, wait, you accept credit cards. That money's not going to hit your account for 3 days anyway.
I need my money quicker.
At Chase, we hear you. With Express Funding, card payments are in your Chase account the next business day. Go to chase.com/expressfunding. Chase for business, so you can.
Compensated participation. All businesses are subject to credit approval. Not all clients are eligible for next business day funding, and additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
Can you imagine a world without children? A world without their smiles or their laughter? A world where children don't play or sing or dream or imagine?
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we can't imagine a world without children. That's why we're working every day to find cures for diseases that strike down children everywhere. Diseases like cancer, pediatric AIDS, and sickle cell. And we won't stop until every child is cured and every disease is defeated. Because we can't imagine a world without children. Can you?
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. To learn how you can help, log on to our website, stjude.org.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jose Cruz from the San Diego Council on Literacy. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show. We're on WS Radio, and we're talking to Cheri Rae. She's the director of the Literacy Project. Cheri, tell us about DyslexiaLand. I think this is your book, a field guide for parents of children with dyslexia, and how and why you wrote it.
Well, I wrote it because I am a journalist, and that was my orientation when I came to this issue, was to research it and to find out everything I could. And what I quickly learned is it really is like a place like no other. It's got its own language, it's got its own culture, its history, and many obstacles to overcome before you can plot your journey through. So I thought, well, I kind of like that idea of, creating it as a field guide. And I actually have some experience. I've written some guides to desert travel and other places. So I thought, well, that's kind of a fun way to approach it. And so I thought it would be really helpful for parents to have a guide where pretty much everything that you needed to know to help get your kids through school, from kindergarten through high school, just giving them the smattering of some of the history of dyslexia and some of the culture and some of the important people and just a good overview, because you could research forever on the internet and really not just kind of spin your wheels and not know where you're going. So I just wanted a nice handy guide. I wrote it in about I think it took me a couple of years to do it. I actually did it in two different versions. The first one, I actually had a small little pocket-sized version that had a fold-out map. And it was kind of cool, it was all color and very fun. And, it's kind of like the dark side of dyslexia and the light side. And of course, we want to get to the positive place and support our children's strengths and get to where they get on their pathway to success. So there's a lot of traveling metaphors throughout the book. And I finished it after my son graduated from high school, because I thought it would be important to have had that entire experience, not just, just sort of, be midway through. And, I always tell parents when they talk to me, and they've got like a fourth grader and they're really struggling, it's like, this is not your time to advocate for anyone else. So you just take care of your own child. And those of us who have already been there need to do the advocacy for you, because they've got to worry about, sometimes you have to worry about retaliation. Sometimes you just have to worry about the amount of time that you're taking just to help your child. So I wanted this to be the kind of resource book that people could use, as if I was sitting there having coffee with them, giving them the kind of advice that they need to kind of get from one step to the next. So I tried to make it as complete as possible with a light and very positive approach. And it's got a lot of fun illustrations done by a mom of a dyslexic child, and so she really understood the situation as well. And it's a very positive, and it's about supporting strengths.
Wonderful.
So it's been very well reviewed, and I'm really happy with it. Yeah.
And how are people finding it? Are they looking for it? Are they referred to it? Are teachers buying it too?
Some. It's on Amazon. It's also on my website, DyslexiaLand. I have to say that these days it's not that easy to get a book out into the public, in terms of, getting it. There aren't that many bookshops anymore, which we used to have. And, it's hard to get books into libraries and stuff. So it's pretty much word of mouth and social media, and people learn about it. And then, sometimes teachers, will buy 5 copies and give it away, tutors and educational therapists who keep it in their office. So we do some special sales, and I have to say I've had a lot of family, this year has been so crazy. There's been a lot of family illnesses. So I've really backed off of promoting the book in the last several months, but I'll get back to it. And I do have a Facebook site, DyslexiaLand, and I've got a lot of people who follow that, and I put up little ideas and encouragement and that sort of thing, because I do think we are a community that needs to support each other, and we can really learn from each other. And one thing that exists now that didn't exist when I was doing this was the whole social media. I mean, you can learn so much just from connecting with other people all over the world, literally. I've got people in Ireland and Australia who love DyslexiaLand, and Canada, so that's very cool.
And so do you attend conferences, put on workshops? Do the school districts hire you? Have you done any presentations in Europe for
in Europe, I wish. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? No, I have. Yeah, of course. I've done many presentations, oftentimes through libraries. I really like that venue, and I was just thinking about a couple of years ago when was doing a monthly series in local libraries, and in multi-counties areas, and I've done workshops and that sort of thing. Of course, everything's thrown off right now with COVID, but we'll be getting back to that, because parents really need to know what to do, and you have to make the decision: are you going to spend your time fighting with the school district, or are you going to spend your time instructing your child, and how are you going to do that? And so they need to know what their options are, and it may be that it isn't, that there are other ways to approach getting your kid to learn to read, write, spell, and feel good about themselves, because those are all important.
So I know it may be a case-by-case basis, but what is the right answer? What if you're a parent and you struggle with reading, or you're not a very good teacher, or you're not patient, and you have limited resources versus going toe-to-toe with the school district? How do you? I don't know that there's an answer to that. It's just a predicament. It is.
It is, and of course, resources is number one. And I've certainly met with plenty of parents who have figured that out. They just reach deep into their pockets and spend the money, or spend their college money now, and that sort of thing. There's other people that have worked with educational therapists and maybe done some barter. I know a lady who cleans houses for her in exchange for getting her daughter reading instruction.
Right.
So if you have to kind of think about and be clever about it, and maybe you can find a neighbor or someone. It's interesting when you start talking about reading struggles, how common they are. Dyslexia is 1 in 5, so that's pretty.
It's not rare.
A lot of people have those struggles.
Right.
Yeah, it's not rare at all. And you end up talking to your neighbor down the street, and they say, "Oh, I used to be an Orton Gillingham teacher," and you're like, "Whoa. What?" And so there's ways, if you're creative, to come up with solutions. And I think I had hoped very much that during all this COVID stuff that people would get very, very creative about having little pods and teaching children, small groups, would be great. I don't think that has happened as much as I'd hoped. I think the creativity gene just isn't necessarily in the bailiwick of school districts and administrators. I think they're much more into the bureaucracy. But I'd hoped that some outside the box solutions would have come up. But parents do need to figure it out, and not necessarily it's not necessarily through the schools.
Yeah. Well,
it
sounds like you made
the
information very accessible. I mean, as you're describing your book, it almost sounds like a game. Is it sort of like that, or I know it's a journey, right?
It's a journey. It's definitely a journey, and you do have to play the game. But the more you learn, and you can stand toe to toe with the school district officials, the more that they see that you are aware, and maybe you become more aware than they are. I mean, I remember I was advocating for a kid to get Orton Gillingham, and the special ed director at the school was sitting there saying, "What is this Orton Guggenheim thing you're talking about?" And I'm like, let's have a little chat.
Yeah.
It doesn't take too much to become very knowledgeable, and you really have to do that for your child, and then you could figure out your options. We're here in California. Unfortunately, we don't have the legislation behind. It's not at the place where it needs to be. But just yesterday, a bill made its way through an education committee in
Senate
the Assembly. It was just through the education committee, but it's to begin to identify students from kindergarten to grades 2.
And to do something with that. I mean, I just signed something. I'm trying to remember what it is, but it was a Senate bill that was on the table. And it wasn't just identification. It was also taking action. So maybe we're catching up.
I mean, it has to be. Yeah. Well, we had some legislation a few years ago, but it wasn't nearly as extensive as it needed to be. But, but the concern is, and the urgency is, these are children's lives we're talking about. Yeah. And the kids that were in kindergarten when I started this have graduated from high school by now.
Yeah.
And they have not received the education that they need. So what does that do to them? What does it do to our culture? What does it do to our communities? No one is as healthy or as achieving in this at their full potential when you can't read.
Right. And so, that's part of the message. Cheri, we're going to take a break here, but you're absolutely right. And I look at my interest in literacy, all the people I've worked with, and I know there's a lot of causes out there, but goodness gracious, I think we're working in a place where the skills that come with literacy, they're essential to functioning and being in a career of your choice, and finishing high school and going to college and all these things, and having a successful marriage and raising your kids and all of these things. So
everything.
We're in the right business. We just need more people to come on board with us. So we're going to come back, folks.
There you go.
We're talking to Cheri Rae. She's the director of the Dyslexia Project, and you're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio. We'll be right back.
Thank you for listening to WS Radio. Improve your business and your life with useful information from experts and thought leaders. WS Radio is radio with ROI.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is working to help keep you and your community safe from the threat of novel or new coronavirus. Take the following everyday steps to help avoid the spread of all respiratory viruses. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue. Throw the tissue away and then wash your hands. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects or surfaces, such as remote controls and doorknobs. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. And stay home if you are sick. Call your healthcare provider if you develop fever, cough, or difficulty breathing. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Can you imagine a world without children? A world where children don't play, or dream, or imagine?
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're working every day to find cures for diseases that strike down children, because we can't imagine a world without children. Can you?
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. To learn how you can help, log on to our website, stjude.org.
Homeless veterans and their families are suffering and need our support, but many won't ask or don't know that help is within reach. Veterans Community Services is here to help. Amazingly, about 35% of the homeless in our neighborhoods are veterans with families. Low-income veterans or their friends are encouraged to contact Veterans Community Services and reach out for help with housing and other services. Call now, 800-974-9909.
Do you want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the coaches training program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome back to the show. We're into our fourth and final segment with Cheri Rae. She is the director of the Dyslexia Project. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show, and I'm Jose Cruz. Before we get further, I want Cheri to give us her website address so that people know how to get in touch with her.
Oh, okay. It's www.dyslexialand.com.
Very good.
And that's probably the best place to get a hold of me.
Excellent, excellent. Now, how do you, because you are a nonprofit organization, right? Or I see it's a 501c3. Oh, a 501c3.
Yes,
Got it.
yes.
I got it.
Yes, the Dyslexia Project is a nonprofit organization, yes. And, I was very lucky. When I first started out in my advocacy, I attracted the attention of a very generous dyslexic philanthropist who funded my work. So I was able to work part-time. Well, she funded me part-time through the school district to work with them and to help them develop more knowledge about dyslexia. And of course I worked on it full time, and that's how we were able to do so many outreach events and so much action in the community. And then unfortunately when that superintendent came who was not interested in dyslexia, she was,
Right.
it became a difficult situation. And so at that point I decided, well, I need to continue this work. So I decided, well, I'll just create the nonprofit so I can continue it. But it's not been as steady work as it was before, because, it was quite wonderful, and she was very generous.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there are very, very successful individuals who have dyslexia who really want to see things change, but perhaps don't want to get out in front of it. And so I was incredibly blessed to be able to work with her.
Very good. Now, do you have an office yourself, or you work from your home, or do people go to a place to let me see, get counsel, for example?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. I work at home, and then I work with a photographer, Moni DeWitt, who is also dyslexic and very accomplished photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I are working on a photographic project called 1 in 5, The Face of Dyslexia. And the whole intention is to make visible the invisible. So we're photographing individuals who have dyslexia in their favorite locations. And so it ranges everywhere from a little second grader who decided to sit backwards on his school desk to a 94-year-old philanthropist who was photographed on the beach with her mink stole on. So we run the gamut, and so we really are showcasing the stories and the images of people who have dyslexia and the wide range. It doesn't discriminate. Dyslexia is everywhere, and so we're working on that. So at her studio, we've created a community resource center so people can learn more about literacy and dyslexia and how to get more help for their children. So,
very good, very good.
Yeah.
So you've met some celebrities. I mean, I actually had the opportunity to see Paul Orfalea speak, and it looks like you also got to hang out with him a little bit. And
well, he lives here in Santa Barbara, so he's kind of a local hero. And he has a kind of a hangout, sort of an incubator kind of a place downtown on State Street. So we photographed him there and had conversation with him. So he's part of our project, and he's been incredibly generous to the dyslexic community forever, because he's quite notable for founding Kinko's, and he teaches at USC, and he's quite an outside the box entrepreneur. And so he was part of our Distinguished Dyslexic series as well. And yeah, we've met with and we photographed Dr. Marianne Wolf.
Yeah,
at
met her
UCLA
too. Yeah,
with her wonderful center.
Yeah.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
I love her work, and she's just the nicest, most fun person. So she was very generous with her time, and I love what she's doing at UCLA with her Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Thinking. What is it? Diverse Learning and Social Justice.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a component of this whole issue is it's teaching reading, and it's not just reading, it's reading, writing, spelling, and math sometimes. People have to be able to communicate well with the written word, and it's just how our culture has moved, and we've got to help them with those skills. And so it is an issue of social justice.
It really is. It really is. Now, the term that keeps coming up more in the last year and a half, probably have never heard it, and it makes sense. And I'd say maybe it's part of a movement that's happening. You tell me, the science of reading. The science of reading. Now,
well,
yeah.
I think it's a succinct way to discuss this whole thing where you've got a number of words that I used before about it being direct, explicit, sequential and all that. When you just talk about the science of reading, because there are so many studies, and it goes back to the National Reading Panel back the year 2000, and basically they talked about these very principles of the enormity of skills that it takes to be a competent reader. And so the science of reading just sort of encompasses all of that. And Emily Hanford has done a lot of work on that subject and how important it is to look at the underpinnings. And there are a number of books that Mark Seidenberg wrote about it, and his book is, what is it? I can't remember the name of his book, but there are many books that are out there now, where there are researchers who are saying this is the way the brain learns to read, and we need to do that. So yeah, I think it's a nice buzzword that we're using, and like it does seem to perk up people's ears.
I like it. We're coming to a close, Cheri, but tell me, what is the most important thing, the thing that you have said to the children that you taught to the children who get to hear maybe from a Paul or Philea? What is the most important thing for them to know?
One little girl wrote me a thank you letter, and she said, "Thank you for teaching me that dyslexics can change the world." And I think that was, I'm like, well, she got it. People who have dyslexia can do pretty much anything and everything. They do it a little bit differently. And, of course, we've got just legions of people who have done amazing, brilliant activities and inventions. And so dyslexia is just a difference. It's and it's a pretty positive one.
Yeah.
So we need to look at it a little bit differently. Yeah.
So what is your son doing now?
Oh, well, he's done so many different things. He was working at a bike shop through the pandemic, and then he got tired of that. He had been working as a valet, which was a perfect job for a dyslexic because he could deal with very wealthy people, drive cars, run around. Right now, he just started a new job with a software company, and he's actually, interestingly enough, his reading skills are good enough, and of course his people skills are good, that he's working to become an account executive with a software company.
Very good.
So it takes some time.
Yeah.
Parents need to remember that it takes a little time for them to get where they need to be.
Well,
like
he had you in his corner, and you created. You invested in other people who, that philanthropist who invested in your work. People you've invested in. It's a chain, and it continues to pay in such an important way. Cheri, we're gonna break here and bring you back at some time to give us updates. Any last sentence?
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest. I'm so impressed with what you're doing, and I hope to be able to duplicate it here in Santa Barbara. So I so appreciate your work.
Well, we appreciate your work. It's priceless, life-changing. It makes a world of difference. We need to keep getting the message out there, and you're playing a big role in that way. So we're we're going to make sure that we get the link to this radio show out there, and we'll
Great.
pass it on to you so you can share with your friends and more people can understand what's happening and why this is important. So thank you, Cheri Rae. She's the director of the Dyslexia Project, and I'm Jose Cruz. You've all been listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk.
Do you want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment Coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the Coaches Training Program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813.
You can reduce your risk of COVID-19 by cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched items and surfaces every day. These items include remotes, tables, counters, light switches, doorknobs, handles, toilets, and sinks. Wear disposable gloves to clean and disinfect. If you can see that the item is dirty, wash first with soap and water or another general cleaner. Then use a household disinfectant to kill germs. Follow manufacturer's instructions for application and proper ventilation to safely use the product. For phones or other electronics, follow the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and disinfecting. If no instructions, use alcohol-based wipes or sprays containing at least 70% alcohol. Dry surface thoroughly. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.